For many manufacturers, it takes years, if not decades and generations, to have one of their vehicles become a success and class leader. Well, for Kia, it was practically an overnight success for the Telluride. The minute this crossover arrived at showrooms, Americans couldn't get enough of them. They loved the three-row crossover, they loved its practicality, its affordability, and luxurious demeanor. Well, here we are, almost 7 years removed from the first generation, and we have a new Telluride, basically brand new from the ground up. You see that with the styling, you're gonna find that with the interior, and in today's video, we're gonna find out if the second generation Telluride can prove to us that it wasn't a fluke, that it wasn't beginner's luck, that Kia can make a three-row crossover that is a formidable foe to Toyota and Honda. So in today's video, we're gonna check out what this crossover has to offer us, check out the exterior, the interior, take it out for a test drive, and see why the Kia Telluride for 2027 might be the best option here in the three-row crossover market. So as always, let's begin with that pricing. For the 2027 Kia Telluride we're taking a look at today, this is the X-Line SX Prestige Hybrid, coming in at a starting cost of just below $60,000. Now this will be the top of the range for the hybrid variant, whereas with the gas-powered model, you can go a little bit further with the X Pro, providing all-terrain tires, an off-road suspension, higher ground clearance. But I think a lot of you will go in the hybrid direction for more than one reason. Obviously, better efficiency, but with this particular trim we're taking a look at today, it's the luxurious aspects. And in some ways, just like we saw last generation, you could cross-shop this with mainstream rivals like the Honda Pilot, or maybe, just maybe, an Audi Q7, an Acura MDX, Infiniti QX60. But what we have here in terms of its styling and design, you're going to notice that for this new generation, it is about 2 inches longer. That will give you much more practicality for the second and third rows and also the cargo space. So just like we saw with the first generation, it's all about the intangibles. Now design-wise though, it kind of looks like a Range Rover. I'm sorry, I had to say it because look at these taillights. Look at these taillights with the vertical design. That kind of looks like the Range Rover, and there are some features for the interior that I would argue is Range Rover inspired. Aesthetically, as you take a look up front, you are going to receive full LED headlights, but once again, the amber daytime running lights, which Kia loves using, and they've doubled down on that for this second generation. Also, better yet, you will have LED fog lights for better visibility at night or in adverse weather conditions. One thing that does carry over from the first generation though is this aggressive front grille. It's a bit wider, a bit more obtuse than the first generation, give you some gloss black trim and some plastic cladding here, giving you a sportier appearance, and I also think makes this crossover feel a bit more aggressive from the outside. That gloss black trim extends to the lower portion of the front bumper, which blends in really nicely with our black jade green paint color, which I think a lot more manufacturers need to be using their greens. Now, as you make your way over to the side profile, there's some unique styling, some funky styling if I'm gonna be honest here. Aside from the 21-inch alloys, you're gonna have gloss black trim for the wheel arches, and between those two gloss black lines is cladding. It's like Kia wasn't sure whether they wanted to go all cladding or gloss black trim. I've never seen that before. And then we have this funky design right here. I'm not sure about that. But you are going to receive 21-inch alloy wheels with the X-Line SX Prestige. And it's going to be in gloss black. So you have a lower profile appearance for this trim. And these wheels do look like they come right off of the EV9. So in some ways, this vehicle could be seen as a full gas-powered version of the EV9, but does have its own unique styling. Now, just like with the wheel arches, that same design pattern continues along the side profile with some gloss black trim and that cladding. So theoretically, you could be able to take on some snow-covered roadways or dirt roads, and that will deflect the road salt and debris. Matching those wheels is going to be gloss black side mirror caps with turn signal indicators in a vertical design. So a lot of continuity in terms of the lighting here for this vehicle. I have never seen that before in this market, and you will have blind spot detection for added safety. Then one design element that will be found on Range Rovers, I know you're sick of me talking about this, but I have to bring it up, is the flush door handles. I kind of like that touch here on a vehicle in this market. Up top, you are going to find gloss black roof rails, so if you are going skiing and snowboarding during the winter or camping during the summer, you can store everything up there and have a good time with friends and family. Then as you make your way around to the back, here we have those taillights in the vertical design. Now, I have to be honest though, we saw the vertical taillights on the first generation. So it's not like Kia decided, oh, we're gonna follow the Range Rover in terms of its aesthetics, but it does look a bit more upscale. I have to say, this vehicle does have an upscale demeanor that we didn't necessarily see last generation. So I think Kia is aiming very high here with this crossover. Now you're also going to find more gloss black trim for the lower portion of the rear bumper, some plastic cladding obviously, and with this being a hybrid, no visible exhaust outlets. But I personally think that from a mainstream manufacturer, this is one clean looking crossover. But let me know in the comment section below, what do you think about the 2027 Kia Telluride? Powering our Kia Telluride today is going to be a 2.5-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder engine and dual electric motors, giving us a hybrid setup here, producing a total of 329 horsepower and 339 pound-feet of torque, and best of all, it is paired with a 6-speed automatic transmission, so no ECVT here. Also, with this being the X-Line SX Prestige, all-wheel drive does come standard. Now, the big concern here out of the 2027 Kia Telluride and the second generation is that Kia dropped the V6, and everyone loves having a V6 in this class. And with the full gas-powered version, you get a 2.5-liter turbo, and as we know and as we've seen so far in this market, Turbo 4s aren't always the best pairing for a 3-row SUV like this, and hopefully at some point I can experience that powertrain. But out of the hybrid motor though, you're not going to be worrying about performance because you're looking at a 0 to 60 time below 7 seconds, which I think is pretty impressive here for a vehicle of this size. Now, also more impressive is going to be the fuel economy. You're looking at right on 30 miles per gallon in the city and 32 miles per gallon on the highway for a combined average of 31 miles per gallon. Now, in real-world testing so far during my time with this vehicle, I've seen some mixed results because in and around the suburbs, I've been averaging around 35 to 38 miles per gallon, believe it or not, traveling at 35 miles per hour. On the highway, though, and I did come back from Maine a couple of days ago, I was seeing close to 26, 27, but I was not using cruise control. So we are going to be testing the MPGs at a later date because I do think this vehicle is going to be economical alongside being fun to drive. Because of the exterior refresh for the 2027 Kia Telluride, you've probably heard the comparisons between this and a full-size Range Rover, mostly because of those taillights. It's difficult to miss. You take a look at those lights and immediately you think of the Land Rover badge. But there's details and cosmetic elements for the exterior, features for the interior that makes you question whether Kia is trying to be a mainstream premium luxury offering in the 3-row crossover market, because they have gone lengths that Honda, Toyota, Ford, and Chevrolet have not yet gone in. I do think, though, objectively, that the Kia Telluride has to compete directly with the Hyundai Palisade, especially at this price point. Because with the Palisade, as we already experienced before, it has this mid-century modern interior and gives you a bit more definition. Whereas the Kia Telluride is a bit more simplistic, but still gives you an interior that you demand and maybe you deserve here at $60,000, and it begins with the seats. You're going to receive power adjustable heated and ventilated Syntec seats for both the driver and passenger, with the driver's side having 2-position memory for added convenience, and the driver's side does have a massaging driver's seat. So just like we saw with the Genesis G80, for some reason this family of brands likes only offering a massaging seat for the driver and leaves the passenger out in the cold. But take a look at the details for the front seats. We have suede for the backs of the seat with the X-Line badge, but then also the headrest. That headrest is typically not found in a mainstream offering, and that gives you some cushioning and support for your neck and your head. So you're not going to be dealing with any type of fatigue there. The bolstering and support, I think, is exceptional, especially with this vehicle not being sports tuned. So I think you're going to find yourself nice and snug being behind the wheel of this crossover. But this attention to detail isn't just exclusive to the seats. It's also what's found in front of you and also above you. So you're going to have this heated leather wrap steering wheel, which does feel really nice in the hands. It's somewhat yoke-shaped, and also you have a flat bottom and flat top. And you have paddle shifters to rotate the gears yourself. Also, what you are going to notice is the suede headliner for the pillars, and that extends to the headliner, and also your sun visors. So the suede inserts that you found on the seats are going to be found above you and also behind you, because the second row sees that too. And then when we check out the cargo area, behind the third row seats, you see that suede as well. A lot of manufacturers are not going to give you that here at around $60,000, especially from mainstream brands. Now, also found in front of you is going to be a head-up display with traffic sign recognition and a digital speedometer. Then you take a look at the nice, almost 30-inch conjoined screen, giving you a full digital gauge cluster. Now, just like we saw in previous Kia reviews and also with Hyundai, this digital gauge cluster is not super in-depth, nor is it complex. No map display, no multiple layouts. It's simply just the information that you are looking for. So it has your tire pressure monitoring system and your fuel economy. Now, you are going to have different drive modes here with this model. You're going to have Eco, Sport, and My Drive, and then there will be terrain modes for snow, mud, and sand. Now, when you do place it in Sport mode, you do get more of a red aesthetic, whereas in Eco, green. Kind of makes sense there, but that's basically it. No fanfare, and honestly, I think a lot of you are looking for that simplicity. But in some ways, this does remind me of the EV9, very EV9 inspired, because just to the right of that digital gauge cluster is going to be your climate control settings. Now, I know some people don't like that. Some people do not like having that right there, and I got to say, the steering wheel does get in the way. The steering wheel does block that mini screen there, so maybe Kia can fix that in future model years. However, you are going to be able to adjust the temperature and fan speed on the dashboard with physical buttons there. Kind of like it. Now, making our way over to the infotainment system, here we're going to have wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto compatibility to go along with onboard navigation. And then we have a small Easter egg that would only be found in a Range Rover. And that is the Meridian audio system to amplify the audio of your favorite music. There's got to be a copyright infringement there or something. You know, this vehicle already kind of looks like a Range Rover from the exterior, and then you throw in the Meridian audio system. I mean, come on. Now, much like we saw in Hyundai and Genesis products, this screen functions the exact same way. You have widgets here, so that way you can easily access your setup where you have your general settings, your vehicle settings. It gets you to sub-menus, so you can adjust everything, including the ambient lighting, which is more like accented lighting later at night. So this vehicle is trying to be somewhat luxurious while also giving you modern technology and not confusing you with that technology, more importantly. The only downside here with this being a Kia and not a Genesis product is that we don't have a dial to scroll through different menus. And instead, you have to be reaching for that screen. That I really don't like. I would like to see some more buttons here that allows us to easily access what we want and also have that scroll wheel. Now, we do have quick access icons beneath the head unit for home, map, search, media, and setup, also, of course, favorites. But then you're still going to be forced to scroll through those menus yourself by using the touchscreen. That's just one thing I really don't like, and that's one thing I'd like to see Kia maybe address in future model years. Now, with this being a top trim for the hybrid, you are going to have plenty of camera angles to choose from. You're going to have a rear backup camera with trajectory, a top view camera, also a 3D view as well. So again, another small luxury aspect and luxury item that would typically be found out of BMW, Audi, and Mercedes-Benz. You're also going to have a front-facing camera with trajectory as well, and then you can see those tires. That way you're not scraping those wheels when you are parking on city streets or parking in a garage. Continuing on beneath the head unit, once again, we have those buttons. We have an actual volume knob here. Love to see that. Then we have, of course, your different modes for your fan speed and fan direction. And then beneath that will be 3 USB-C outlets, 2 wireless phone charging pads, and then we have our center console. Now, beneath this floating bridge is going to be another storage compartment for a smaller bag or two. But we are going to have a row of buttons for auto vehicle hold, hill descent control, your camera systems, and park assist features. And then we have this big tray here with 2 cup holders and then also enough storage for a wallet, another smartphone, or other smaller tech gadgets. Then you're going to have a center storage compartment, which is deep enough for another wallet, another smartphone. Love to see it. Then to round out the front seating area, you're going to have a digital rear view mirror. That's going to be useful if you have kids in the second and third row, so you have plenty of visibility looking out behind you and you want to lane change. And then above is going to be a power moonroof, which brings in some natural light to the interior. That opens, and you're going to notice you're going to have a sunroof for the second and third row. That's fixed, though. For second row passengers, your experience is just as serene as up front. Because first off, you have captain chairs in the X-Line SX Prestige, and we have the Syntex upholstery giving us a lot of comfort and support. But it's the interior space, it's the amenities that makes you question, am I in a luxury SUV or am I still in a mainstream vehicle? Because what you have here, first and foremost, is right around 43 inches of legroom. That is class leading. There is no other 3-row crossover in this market that's going to match what the Kia Telluride is offering. This alone gives you far more flexibility if you have a growing family, because not only do you have all this interior space for the second row, that extends to the third row as well. And with these seats adjustable on rails, you can accommodate tall passengers in that third row. So it's possible you may never need a Chevrolet Tahoe or a GMC Yukon ever again here with this particular vehicle, and you're saving a couple of grand. Now, also when it comes to the amenities though, this is what I really like. So first off, you're going to have climate control, so much like we saw with the Hyundai Palisade, but we also have heated and ventilated outboard seats for the second row. So during the winter months, you can be nice and warm. During those hot summer days, nice and cool. It gets really good here. Also, you will have 2 cup holders in front of you to go along with a center storage compartment. So if you have kids back here, you can fit some toys or some items to keep them entertained. That's really nice. Also, and best of all, is that we are going to have sunshades to block out the haters, to block out the sunlight, and to just sit back here and relax. And then one last thing I want to point out here is that you are going to find USB-C outlets on the sides of the front seats. That way you can charge up your smartphones or tablets, and that way you can be entertained and relaxed while you're sitting back here on a longer drive. Then above, you're going to find a fixed glass sunroof, which brings in some natural light to the interior and makes the cabin feel a bit more expansive and a bit more space where you don't feel cramped or claustrophobic. Then finally for the third row, back here in the bleachers, you have right around 32 inches of legroom, which will outclass many unibody chassis 3-row crossovers in this market. Typically, if you are going to accommodate taller passengers way back here, you're going to need a body-on-frame SUV. The Kia Telluride gives you a bit more space where you can have smaller adults, maybe even taller children back here, and they can be very comfortable. What I am going to say, though, is that these seats are not the most comfortable, though, and I feel like I'm sitting in a ball. So this could get tiring rather quickly, and hopefully my passenger in front of me will be courteous and slide their seat a bit more forward so I can at least stretch my legs a bit. Now, you are going to have some amenities here out of this trim that are optional. You can go with the executive package, giving you heated outboard seats for the third row, believe it or not. So everyone can be comfortable in this vehicle, and also on top of this, too, with that roof line. It's high enough where I don't think people are going to be hitting their head on the headliner, and if they are going to be hitting their head on the headliner, it's suede. So it's still going to be comfortable and cushioned. So what Kia has done here for the second generation in terms of it being a family-friendly vehicle, they upped their game for this generation, in my opinion. Returning to the rear fascia to take a look at the cargo area for the 2027 Kia Telluride, you are going to receive a power liftgate. And inside, behind the third row seats, you're looking at right on 21 cubic feet of room. Now, you are sacrificing a bit by choosing the hybrid over the full gas-powered variant. But as you guys know, I like seeing more than 20 cubic feet of room behind the third row seats, and that's exactly what we have here out of the Telluride. I was able to fit all my camera gear today with no issues. That's 2 bags of camera gear, a gimbal, and a tripod. There's also the floor mats here behind the third row seats taking up some of that space. So if you are going on a bit of a grocery run and you have kids in the third row, you can definitely fit some of those groceries back here. When you lower those third row seats, now you're looking at right on 49 cubic feet of room, which is pretty good in this market. So if you don't need the third row seats, there's plenty of space for maybe skiing and snowboarding equipment, camping gear if you are going on a road trip with the family. And then lastly, with the second row seats folded, you're looking at right on 88 cubic feet, which again falls right in line with all the competitors in this market. So practicality is where the Telluride shines. It shined in the first generation, and it really shines for the second generation. Kia is essentially playing with house money at this point, because within a few short years after its arrival, the Telluride basically took over the 3-row crossover market. It challenged the status quo. Maybe, just maybe, you didn't need to spend 65 or 70 grand for a vehicle like an Audi Q7, BMW X5, Mercedes-Benz GLE, Acura MDX. I think you guys are getting the point. But the Telluride proved that you don't need to spend a lot of money to get everything under one roof. Performance, great handling characteristics, technology, fit and finish, overall refinement, and probably more importantly for this particular segment, practicality. And the Telluride really set the tone and raised the bar even higher for what a 3-row crossover in the US should be. So the question now is, does the second generation Kia Telluride continue on that legacy? Does it build off of what the first generation offered? And is it better than the first generation? Well, There has been some sacrifices made here to make this vehicle a bit more well-rounded, maybe mature. So we no longer have the V6, which we have talked at great lengths about three-row crossovers that need better powertrains, and Turbo 4s typically aren't them. You have the Honda Pilot and Nissan Pathfinder with the naturally aspirated V6. Even the Hyundai Palisade still offers a V6. And then you have, on the other side of the spectrum, crossovers like the Chevrolet Traverse, which on paper, theoretically, should be a fun daily driver. And then with the Turbo 4, it's lagging. It's just not a great pairing for an SUV of that size. So the Kia Telluride is kind of in the middle here because it does offer a Turbo 4, but then you also have a hybrid powertrain. Now, I haven't yet experienced a 2.5 without the hybrid, but I gotta say, this engine we have today is the way to go, no exceptions. Because you have a 0 to 60 time below 7 seconds, but then you also have the power necessary to get on the highway quickly, past slower drivers, and you're not sitting here thinking, I need a better powertrain. Also, this engine is paired with a 6-speed automatic transmission, which for most hybrids, you get an eCVT or CVT, and it's not really the most enjoyable experience. So I think the hybrid makes a bit more sense, and then you also throw on the efficiency. To average close to 31 miles per gallon combined, that is huge, especially for a vehicle like this, because a lot of the naturally aspirated V6 crossovers are gas guzzlers. The second compromise, or sacrifice, is the handling. And this is one thing that I miss a lot, because the first Kia Telluride in some ways was inspired by the Germans, just when you take a look at the interior, but then also the driving characteristics. And it was a sporty, athletic vehicle for what it was, I mean, considering its size. Now, I'm going to argue that the steering is a bit more sedated and numb, but there's not a lot of feeling here. Even when you put it in sport mode, which I would not recommend unless you are passing someone on the highway, because throttle response does get a bit more aggressive and quick. But steering input, it's almost dead. When you are on a winding back road or you're in the corners, there's just no feel. There's no engagement, which is a bit of a surprise because when you're driving in the city or you're getting around a parked car, the maneuverability of this vehicle is actually rather impressive because you look at the size, you look at the weight, and you're thinking, all right, this is a cumbersome vehicle. But the way in which Kia tuned the steering, you can easily get around objects, you can easily maneuver your way around in a city situation. Unfortunately, it just doesn't translate at speed. So performance-wise, I think we've taken a step back. But this step back has pushed the Telluride forward in other aspects. Because, for one, this suspension is soft. Considering we have 21-inch wheels here on the X-Line SX Prestige, you really wouldn't know. The suspension is tuned for comfort and luxury, and also we have insulated glass. So with the 21-inch wheels, we're not hearing any of that road noise, and I'm not hearing a lot of the outside world. It's giving you a more upscale driving environment. Also, this 2.5-liter turbo, unless you're on throttle, you barely hear it. So just like the fact we don't have that CVT or eCVT, there's no droning, there's no real sound coming out of this engine, it's a really relaxed driving experience. And that's where I think this vehicle has improved immensely. Also, it seems like this SUV has become far more mature. And it's not just the styling, it's not just the features that you get. It's overall demeanor and what this vehicle is offering in terms of features tells you exactly who this vehicle is supposed to be for. When you look at the first Kia Telluride, some would say it's perfect. But this second generation Telluride is for the people who have owned the first generation. And maybe draw in people who own a Honda Pilot, who own a Nissan Pathfinder, maybe even a Ford Explorer. Because the way in which this vehicle drives, it is most certainly fitting its price point. Now, I do need to scale back a bit. I need to pull myself back a bit because the Palisade exists at the same price point, and at $60,000, objectively, the Palisade has a better interior. You have Napa leather seats, which really give you a luxurious driving experience, and you have a mid-century modern dashboard, whereas the Telluride is a bit more simplistic. In fact, I think for both vehicles, it's been inverted. The Telluride got the better looks, but the Palisade got the better interior. And it's going to come down to what you want. But one thing I like here about the Telluride is that it is exactly what the three-row crossover market needs at the moment, while also not compromising on the blueprint that made this vehicle popular in the first place. Like we've already checked out with the second and third rows, that practicality is unrivaled. And then you also throw into the mix the suede headliner, better technology. I'm a bit iffy on the dashboard layout. I'm not a huge fan of the ergonomics, to be quite frank. But then you throw in the quieter driving environment. You throw in the fuel efficiency of the hybrid. And you now have a vehicle that is more of a no-brainer today than it was a couple of years ago. In a market that in some ways is trying to appeal to the vanity of what buyers think they want, with larger touchscreens, more in-depth digital gauge clusters, maybe when it comes to the exterior, all-terrain tires, off-road suspension, cool looks, Kia kept it simple while also trying to be a premium luxury brand. The design for this generation definitely turns heads. People see the rear fascia and they're like, is that a Land Rover? And obviously we don't have an inline six, we don't have a V8 here out of this vehicle, and we most certainly do not have some of the materials for the interior that would be comparable to a Range Rover. But at $60,000, or even below that if you want to go with the lower trim, what you have here is a vehicle that is formidable. A vehicle that's going to actually give you the driving and ownership pleasure that three-row crossovers aren't typically associated with. Everything comes down to the intangibles of practicality, maybe fuel efficiency, interior space, and Kia did all of that, but they went even further with the styling, with the aesthetics, with the interior. And for that, they have made a vehicle that is phenomenal in 2027. But this all comes at the cost of no V6, a bit more of a numb steering, and a 6-speed auto with the hybrid. But quite personally, I think that all of this can be overlooked, and what you have here for a vehicle of this size is exactly what American buyers and American families are looking for. It's just that this time around, it's a bit more mature, maybe a bit more laid back, and that's a winning formula here in this class. So guys, let me know what you think here about the 2027 Kia Telluride. Is this a hit in the three-row crossover market? Is this an attainable Range Rover? Let me know in the comment section below. But guys, once again, thanks so much for watching, take care, and I'll see you guys next time.